Hi, this is On Imagination with the Healing Garden. This is the very first class of my communications class. I want to show you something. I want to show you a world where you meet and you fall in love with somebody and you want to get closer. And you finally have the articulation and the command of language to say the words, I love your perspective. It is my favorite thing in the whole world. I want to learn how to walk in your perspective so I will never harm you again. Imagine a world where instead of people pushing their perspective onto you, ramming it down your throat, as if to say, take this, consume it. Perspective abuse is rape. That's what's being done to us. It is a raping of our own perspective. That is what has been done to us. Our minds are literally being raped every day. And imagine a world where a perspective is sacred, where a perspective is a gift, where when you finally love somebody so much that the ultimate thing you can give them is your perspective, where you literally teach somebody how to walk in your perspective without hurting you. You could say things then to your partner like, in my world, I can't hear voices screaming. I prefer the gentle, quiet isolation of a beach or nature, but not always. Sometimes I love walking into the city for the adventure and the chaos and the noise, so long as I have something grounded that I can always fall back to. And I have to be understood by people. That is the most important thing to me. I must be understood, for when we are understood, only then are we seen. And I need a partner who can walk alongside me with the same authenticity that I walk, because I'm an ethereal walker. And ethereal walkers move differently than everybody else. They feel differently than everybody else. So I need a quieter, gentler existence here on earth with the occasional big bang bash to balance it. But really, I savor my calm and my quiet. And it's hard for me to see anything suffer. I can't handle that. When I see suffering, I have to act. And that person in turn could tell you, when people hurt, I hurt. And they could paint a scene for you so that you could totally understand everything about them. But the road to get to this requires three things. It requires that you do 2 years of shadow work, maybe less. It requires that your partner does 2 years of shadow work, maybe less. And then it requires that the two of you walk through the valley of the shadow of death together. This is where most divorces happen. This is the kill point right here. That's it. This is the kill point right here. Right there. That is where relationships die. When you play this video game and you get to this one path where there's just suddenly the kill zone and you see all these grave sounds. This relationship died here. This relationship died here. This relationship died here. And they're all just millions and millions of relationships stacked at all the same point. And you might see one or two over here. Maybe. My partner and I just made it through. We're over there now. And in that hindsight, I can look back and I can see, oh, going through the valley of shadow and death with your partner is actually a test. It is a test of endurance. Imagine you struggle with a mental illness, and you're going to struggle with that all your life until you finally reach that last final stage of perspective. It's when things could not possibly get worse. When you have a toxic perspective that you are purging, every perspective has this point. You have your perspective, you have your partner's perspective, but when you're in a couple, when you have a relationship, the relationship has a perspective, and the relationship has to go through it also. Just like you have to break everything down until you get to that last minimum breaking point. And that's when we commit suicide or we turn our life around. That's when we drug overdose or we turn our life around. That is the breaking point. Now, for most of us, we get out. Not all of us. For many of us, that bottom breaking point is the point of change. The point of change. And as soon as you turn it around, there's hope. But you got to just stop turning your back to the light. But a relationship goes through the same thing. You get to that point where the toxic relationship, when you finally grow the relationship will also have a very bottom, absolute low point, when it will be the worst it has ever been. And then if you survive it, it will break, snap, and bounce back. And nothing will touch it again. No, nothing will touch it again. I remember when my grandparents went through this. My grandparents were married for 80 years. And there was one fight they had. It was the doozy. It was the fight. The fight they had was so horrific that they talked of divorce. It was the only time a divorce was even thought about between my grandparents. They got through it. They never had a fight like that ever again. Your relationship is going to hit stage 6. And when stage 6 happens, the relationship will be tested. And each one of you will be tested. You will be tested, and he will be tested, or she will be tested, or they. And most relationships die at this point. Most relationships die at the very beginning of this. Mine lasted for a year and a half in this state. And we did break up, didn't break up. There was a lot of words that was being said. There was all these words, relationship, traditional relationship words, and none of them fit us. So we kept rejecting the words. We kept negotiating all of the verbiage. And at the end of the day, we just had nothing but the pure feelings to go on. About 3 days ago, we connected on feelings. It's the first time we connected on feelings. It's when I figured out that, oh, relationships require the connection of the feelings. So I tried it out on my partner. This is what I do. I have a problem with my partner. I bring it to the garden. I conceptualize it. I think about it. I break it down. I fix it. I find a solution. I take it back to my partner. I apply it to him. And either it's right or it's wrong. Either it fixes it or it doesn't. And then I come back here and I put something else together and I figure it out. This is just to heal my partner. There, that's it. I built the garden to save my partner, to save my daughter. And I'm at the end now where the research I'm putting on him is working. And I'm able to walk away from the experience going, I understand the psychology of relationships. I understand the psychology of communication, of socializing, all of it. I get it. And when I stepped back and looked at it all, because all we're doing here is socializing, I realized that the big thing is this. This whole thing is just a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is the death of relationships. Misunderstanding is the death of every social situation you can think of. Every fight is the death of misunderstanding. Of understanding. The moment you have a conflict, you're misunderstanding. So what does that mean? How do you connect with somebody you've lost understanding with? Now, this is a big fucking question. How do you connect with somebody who you have lost a connection with? How do you get it back? Does anyone know? What did your parents try and failed? What did you do when you were children with your friends? In fact, most of us don't have friends anymore. By the time you get to be 30 or 40, you have no friends because you could not repair the connection. You couldn't repair the connection because there was a misunderstanding. You did not have the knowledge to repair the misunderstanding. Whew, this one's big. I can feel it. This one's big. Because all triadic healing is the step-by-step guide on how to repair a connection. That's really all it is. It literally is a step-by-step on how to put it all together. How to save your relationship. How to get and keep friends forever. How to reconnect with family members lost. And your whole life, just like it was mine, was spent with you losing people you love. Going, I don't understand it. Why can't I keep people in my life? And then there's a lot of us just going, yeah, no one ever stays. You just give up. No one ever stays. It's like we all know, as soon as you reach a certain level of a relationship conflict, you know the relationship's gone. You know it's over. You don't even try. You cannot repair a lost connection. But what if you could? What if you could? So, communication is not about the words that come out of our mouth. Communication is actually the ambassador for our psychology. Communication is the ambassador of your psychology. How well do you know your psychology? How well do you know your psychology? I'm going to go ahead and put together a quiz. And you can take the quiz and decide How good is your knowledge on psychology? Because that's what you're communicating. Every time you open your mouth, you are trying to communicate your psychology to other people who know nothing about psychology. You cannot communicate unless you understand the theory of psychology. If you do not know psychology, the theory of psychology, then you cannot communicate effectively. I talked to my father yesterday and I mentioned humility. And he gave me an example about, well, I know what humility is. And he gave me this long example. And when he was done, I looked at him and said, that is the emotion shame. That is not at all the emotion humility. What you just described was the emotion shame. And he went, well, it was embarrassing. Yes, shame is always accompanied with embarrassment. Humility is not. That's how you tell the difference. Humility is void of embarrassment. And I thought about every person who told me about humility. And I realized quite a few people think that humility is shame. And oh, they are not. Now, because of this one word, I understand the psychology of all of this. This is what happens inside the mind of a narcissist. They are humiliated and they feel shame. They feel embarrassment. I'm trying to figure out a word. It's not humiliatized. It's a very specific word. But what happens is these people, narcissists, will experience shame, thinking that it's humility. And then their subconscious mind will plug it in and said, with the concept, humility is bad. And then they will spend the rest of their lives making sure they completely step away and bypass every situation of humility, which is why they won't get help. But humility does not come with embarrassment. Only shame does that. Humility comes with a feeling of humbleness. Humility is humble. Shame is embarrassment. That's how you tell the difference. If you feel, you could argue that shame and humility are the same thing. You feel shame, and if you feel shame, embarrassment, it's shame. But if you feel shame and humble, it's humility. So it's the second emotion, humble or embarrassment, that's going to determine the cocktail of this emotion. This emotion is only relevant to these emotions. So this emotion is determined as shame in relativity to embarrassment, or it is identified as humility when it is associated with this emotion. This is called a compound emotion. You require a combination of elements in order for the emotion to exist. It's a prerequisite to having the emotion. That's a compound emotion. So there's a lot of people out there who do not know the word humility. They're misusing it. They don't know the word shame. They don't know embarrassment versus humble. Can you imagine what humble feels like? What image comes to mind when you think of the emotion humble? Precisely. It's not. I always imagine a knight. Whenever I think humble, I think a knight. That is the emotion that comes to mind, is a knight bowing, giving his loyalty, submitting, submission. That's the difference. Oh, I love my BDSM brain. Oh, it just turned on and I saw it like that. God, I love my BDSM brain. So here's the difference. You have shame and you have humility. The difference is control. If you have control, it's humility. If you don't have control, it's shame. Because in a BDSM setting, it's a submissive who gives and surrenders control on purpose to access one of the two emotions. And as a mistress, I have to know that if they're giving control, keeping control, forcing control, where's the control going? Oh, this is something we talk a lot in my BDS clamps. This is like a lot of it, is where is the control? Forever being mindful of the placement of the control. Because where the control is going to determine what the scenario is. Now, if they turn around and they say, I want consensual, non-consensual, that means that I'm going to have to, with their consent, reenact a situation where there's no consent. It is a very common exposure therapy that a lot of people do here because they want to feel control. Now, feeling control is the problem. They need to take control. So we use BDSM to create a trauma situation, confirming that they are mentally healthy enough to do so. And then we reenact their situation, putting them in the exact moment that they need to be in so that they can rewrite history, literally take control and change the way the story is. Show themselves that they can. Now, someone who feels control in a BDSM setting like that would feel control just by wearing certain things, just by doing certain actions. So there's the feeling and then there's taking, and that changes everything. So whenever you have a situation where you are dealing with humility and shame, embarrassment, and humbleness, the question must also enter into it. Where is the control being passed in all of these situations? In the case of embarrassment, shame, the control has taken away from him. And it was the lack of control in that degradation that created the trauma. So this is a man who now completely rejects humility. You have to be brought down to this level with consent to access humility. But if you are brought down to this level due to force, you will reject ever coming down to this level again. But in this level, there are two emotions to access. And one of those is the cure for narcissistic behavioral syndrome. But people won't come down to this level who have narcissism because they were traumatized in this space. Now, all of this comes back to one fact. The articulation, the words must be precise, or you will have misunderstanding. When you have misunderstanding, the subconscious mind processes things differently. So it's your job, your responsibility to clean up your language so that your archaic subconscious mind can reprogram itself with a finer tuned language system. I say a lot that the subconscious mind is an archaic machine from the Ice Age. Here's the really big shoe that's dropping. The subconscious mind is only ever as smart or as educated as the user. So if you have the vocabulary of a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, and you constantly have problems with people misunderstanding you, it's because your language is shit. It's because your language is significantly underdeveloped. Of course it is. We were all told to shut up as kids. So definitely we're going to have a feeling of, oh, absolutely. We are completely going to have a feeling of not being able to speak, which is the problem. We were conditioned not to speak. So we're not practicing. So we're not getting better. So now we all have these subconscious minds with archaic programming. Everything evolved except our own ability to communicate. Communication is everything. Learn how to communicate properly, and you will be able to literally restore, even prevent misunderstanding between all of your loved ones. And it's all about precision to the language we use. Knowing what the definitions of words are. Really digging into the theory behind a word. Not just memorizing what's in the dictionary. The dictionary was made by men. Challenge it. Focus on your feelings when you say words. Because the words are what matter. The words and the feelings are what ties it together. Words are feelings. They are the same thing. That's why we use words to manifest. But if we have the wrong feelings plugged into the wrong words because we are using the wrong words, how good is your manifestation going to be? Technically, the words mean nothing at that point because it's all about the feelings. But if you have somebody saying to you, you want the feeling of gratitude. Yes, that's the feeling. Gratitude is the key. Gratitude is not the key. Receiving is the key. Gratitude is the consequence. They skipped it. Words matter. You want to manifest? It's the feeling of receiving that you're supposed to be observing. But the feeling of receiving is not the feeling of gratitude. Not at all. They are completely different. Because when you feel the feeling of receiving, it's magnetism, which is what you're actually trying to do when you manifest. But when you say gratitude, it's actually a pushing out because you are giving when you give gratitude. That's why we say giving gratitude. So you're manifesting giving gratitude and pushing it out there. But then you're not receiving, you're not magnetizing, you're not bringing things in. We are really fucking smart people now. We really are. We all are. I believe we're going to catch on to this real fast. I know we are. But we need to be accountable. We all need to hold ourselves accountable for really, truly what the age of our minds really are. When you sit down and you really start to examine your mental age, you really start to realize how much growing you had taken away from you because you just wanted to connect. And that's all we are wanting here is we are wanting to connect. And no one knows how. No one knows how to connect. No one even knows what it is. We say it a lot, we're throwing it around, but we don't know what it is. When you connect, you are literally walking in the perspective of another person. That is connection. When I can sit here and imagine my partner's perspective as clearly as I know my own, now I can move with my partner. It is a completely different level of intimacy, a level of existing, of loving, of connecting, when you literally can walk into the mindset of another person. That is what you seek. But if you're going to do that, you have to be able to communicate your subconscious mind. It all keeps coming back to communication. So these classes are going to cover emotions, communications, the subconscious mind, all of it. This is triadic healing. Huh. Welcome. If you love shit like this, go ahead and subscribe, follow, like, and down below comment. Let me know what part of this video resonated with you. And check out my Linktree account. See everything that we are doing because we do a lot. Thank you so much. And may the kindest of words always find you.